And now let's get started. We're here to conduct a presentation and a discussion of a notice of a violation of the California Voting Rights Act. And now I'll turn to our city manager, Dave Derflinger, and Dylan Johnson, our counsel, for the staff presentation.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, council members. Mayor indicated that myself and Dylan Johnson from our legal counsel's office will be jointly presenting tonight, and that's the case. I'll start off, and then I'll turn it over to Dylan, and I'll wrap up on a couple of the slides. What we're going to talk about this evening is a notice of violation, as you pointed out, that was filed with the city under the California Voting Rights Act. So that's a general topic for this evening. And in that context, we'll provide some background on the city's election system and the California Voting Rights Act. We'll explain what the allegations are about in the notice and the procedures provided under the California Voting Rights Act for the city to address the notice. We'll touch on trends in the California Voting Rights Act in terms of notices of violation in California. And then we'll wrap up with reviewing our purpose for tonight's meeting and the next steps in this process for the city to address the notice under the California Voting Rights Act. So again, I'll start and I'll turn it over to Dylan to fill in some more of the detail. And I'm going to start by talking again about the election system in Carpinteria. We use an at-large election system in Carpinteria. There's generally two types of voting systems, at-large and by district. Under an at-large system, the city council candidates run for office citywide and are elected by a citywide electorate. And most people are very familiar with this form. It's the most common form of election in California, and in the Carpinteria Valley, it's the only form. The Unified School District uses this form in Carpinteria, with the exception of a district in Summerlin. And all the independent special districts also use an at-large system. That's the fire district, the water district, and the sanitary district. In district elections, a candidate runs for office in a particular council district and is elected only by the voters from that district. And this is very common in larger cities, City of Los Angeles, for example. In Santa Barbara County recently, in response to notices served under the California Voting Rights Act, the cities of Santa Maria, Goleta, and Santa Barbara recently switched to district elections and are scheduled to implement that. Talk about a little bit about the at-large voting system history, to give you a little bit more context. It has roots in the municipal reform movement of the early 20th century. It was seen as a way to promote good governance and was seen as a way or as a successor to the corrupt ward systems of that time. A common attribute of an at-large system, for example, is that all council members are held accountable for what happens in the city as a whole rather than feeling responsible only in their district. However, later at-large systems of voting were subsequently identified as a problem under the National Voting Rights Act. For example, it's believed that in certain situations, minority groups in a majority rules system may never be able to elect a candidate of their choice. Even with lots of cities switching to district elections due to the California Voting Rights Act, at-large elections remain by far the most common election system in California. In 2016, a survey was done, and 86% of cities in California still used at-large systems. And that doesn't include all the special districts and counties that may also be using similar systems. That will undoubtedly change if the current trend toward moving to district elections continues, of course. We'll touch on that trend in a minute, but now I'll turn it over to Dylan, who will tell us more about the notice of violation the city received in particular.
Thank you, Dave. So I'm going to address the notice of violation that is the core of this meeting here, what kicked this meeting off. So as Dave was discussing, two basic election systems, at-large versus districts. The city received a notice of violation from the prospective plaintiffs on July 3rd, 2017, and it provided a number of allegations related to voting trends in the city that the notice alleges establish a violation of the California Voting Rights Act. And in subsequent slides, I'll get into the actual act and the law here, but we're just going to go through the allegations in the complaint first. So the requirement is to establish, as I said, racially polarized voting, and the notice provides some information that purports to show that. So the notice states that the city is 43.8% Latino in population, and that the Carpinteria Unified School District student enrollment is about 72% Latino. And yet there is currently no Hispanic or Latino serving on the council, and according to the notice, has not been one since 2008. The notice recounts some data regarding elections, council elections since 1994. It states that 7 out of 58 candidates were Latino, which is about 12.1% of total candidates, and 2 out of 30 elected officials were Latino, which is about 6.7% of all candidates. The notice also alleges that approximately 10.6% of all votes cast since 1994 were cast for Latino candidates. It also alleges that there are 4 Latino candidates who ran in 1996 and 1998, and they would have been elected had they run in precincts that were primarily with high percentage of Latinos, but were actually defeated in the actual elections under the at-large system. I should pause just to say that at this point we have not verified the accuracy of these statements, so that is why I'm saying this is what the notice alleges. The notice also alleges that votes on ballot measures, including Prop 187 and 209, and locally Measure S, exhibited racially polarized voting. They also allege that votes for other jurisdictions in Carpinteria, as Dave mentioned, the other jurisdictions, the sanitary district, the water district, the school district, also vote on an at-large system. It alleges that similarly these elections exhibit racially polarized voting. It alleges that a 2015 survey conducted by the U.S. Census shows that 51% of the white population in Carpinteria has a college degree, while approximately 7.6% of the Latino population does, and that Latinos experience lower rates of possessing high school degrees, lower per capita income, and higher rates of being uninsured. This goes to proving that Latinos in the community bear the effects of past discrimination, which again we'll get into in a subsequent slide. Finally, the notice cites some information from a couple of books about Carpinteria's past, one entitled Aliso School for the Mexican Children, and the other entitled Carpinteria Images of America. In those books, according to the notice, it states that segregation was practiced in Carpinteria schools from 1920 to 1947, and Mexican children were commonly discouraged from pursuing higher education. Also, according to the notice, the books state that segregation was practiced in other areas of the community, such as in housing and recreation and entertainment areas. So that's a summary of the notice. Now I'll talk for a bit about the California Voting Rights Act. It was adopted in 2002, effective January 1st, 2003. Modeled on the federal act, but actually establishes a fairly easier standard for plaintiffs to pursue a violation. The basic premise of the California Voting Rights Act is that at-large election systems may not impair the voting power of protected classes. That's the core of the law. And if a plaintiff can show racially polarized voting in the community, that establishes that the law has been violated. Racially polarized voting is defined as voting in which there is a difference in the choice of candidates or other electoral choices that are preferred by voters in a protected class, and in the choice of candidates and electoral choices that are preferred by voters in the rest of the electorate. Racially polarized voting is established by examining voting results of elections where at least one candidate is a member of a protected class, elections involving ballot measures, and other electoral choices that affect the rights and privileges of the protected class members. Courts additionally look at a variety of factors in determining whether racially polarized voting is present, And they include whether voting patterns correlate with the race of the voter in the community, whether minority preferred candidates are not being elected, and whether the extent to which members of a protected class, again, as I mentioned earlier, bear the effects of past discrimination in areas such as education, employment, and health, which hinder their ability to participate effectively in the political process. So again, we talked about the notice providing some of that background information about the community. It is important to remember, under the California Voting Rights Act, proof of an intent on the part of the voters or elected officials to discriminate against a protected class is not required. What that means in practical terms is that an allegation of a CVRA violation does not imply that the City Council or the voters are acting in a discriminatory manner, but rather is an allegation that the overall electoral system within the city is resulting in the disenfranchisement of minority voters. This slide just talks about a couple of the factors that are considered benefits or detriments in the at-large versus district election system. I'm not going to go into great detail about these. A lot of people have a lot of opinions on these. These are some of the more commonly held opinions. These are not necessarily staff or the city's opinion, but they're meant more for discussion. In the at-large election system, many claim that it provides a better representation for the entire city when the entire legislative body answers to the entire electorate, versus a district-based system that can result in certain elected officials being concerned only with what is occurring in their district, and can result in potentially other negative effects, such as sort of deal-making between different council members that may not be in the interest of the entire community, but are in the interest of certain districts within the community. Others also claim that at-large, or rather district elections are not necessary in small cities where it's possible to really have effective voter outreach to the entire community and consider the entire interests of the community. On the other hand, claims in support of district elections are higher responsiveness to constituents within that district. Obviously, a little bit easier to be focused on your one district and those constituents, a smaller class within the city. Again, of course, increased voting power for the protected class is the issue we're discussing tonight, and that non-incumbents fare better in district elections. That's one of the claims made. So now we'll talk about some of the procedures that we're going to be working with in the CVRA context. The CVRA provides and this is a recent amendment, I should say, just effective, I believe, January 1st, 2017. It provides what you would refer to as a safe harbor if the city follows these provisions, which means that it is safe from a lawsuit based on having an at-large election system. This process is all kicked off by the notice we were provided. The law requires that before any plaintiff sue a city for a violation of the CVRA, they file a notice, which was done here by the submission of the letter with the attached report. Then if the city within 45 days adopts the resolution of intent, and that's a resolution declaring the intent to transition to a district-based election system, outlining the specific steps the city will take and the estimated time frame for taking those steps, and then within 90 days of that date, the date of adopting the resolution, adopts an ordinance actually officially transitioning to district elections. If the city follows those procedures, plaintiffs cannot sue the city for a violation of the CVRA. And, importantly, the amount of attorney's fees plaintiffs can recover is capped at $30,000. And the fees that they seek must be established as their costs for reasonable costs for preparing the notice that was provided to the city. The process of making that transition is also outlined in the law, and in very basic terms, 4 public hearings have to be conducted in between adopting the resolution of intent and adopting the ordinance. 2 hearings before actual maps are proposed to consider how the district line should be drawn, and then 2 hearings after the maps have been proposed to consider those maps and provide and collect more public input. So there's a lot of process in a fairly short time frame here. An alternative path to compliance, or path really to avoiding a lawsuit, is a pre-litigation settlement, which would be where the city enters into a settlement agreement with the prospective plaintiffs, and through that process can sort of outline a different approach. So, and Goleta can be one model for doing this. In the city of Goleta, they entered into a settlement agreement with the plaintiffs in that case, whereby the city adopted its resolution of intent, but then set the timing out to 2022, November of 2022, so that it would afford time for the 2020 census to be completed and to be released in 2021, so that the district lines could be drawn more effectively on the most up-to-date and current information. The settlement also called for the establishment of a public engagement commission, whereby in the interim the city would be doing outreach efforts to increase voter participation. The benefits of doing a settlement like that are that the city maintains more control over the process, such as the control over establishing the district boundaries, the number of districts potentially, and the timing. In this case, you'll see in the attached supplement to the notice that was provided by the prospective plaintiffs, they did offer up that as a potential. They expressed willingness to engage in discussions about that being a potential settlement, something similar that would kick back the date of change till 2022. The main drawback in a settlement versus just complying with the statutory procedures is that a settlement, by its nature, only binds the people who are parties to it. So it binds the city and it binds the plaintiffs in this case. It would not prevent another group of plaintiffs or another single plaintiff from immediately filing another notice and pursuing that against the city. And if they were unwilling to also sort of enter into the similar settlement agreement arrangement, it would force the city to have to go forward with these procedures in order to avoid a lawsuit. So some statistics that are important to bear in mind when considering options under the CVRA after receiving a notice. Since 2006, approximately 66 cities and 150 school districts have transitioned to district elections in California. A majority of the cities have done so after being prompted by a notice of violation. In recent years, Santa Barbara, Santa Maria, and Goleta have all made the switch or are in the process of doing so. There is no reported case where the agency prevailed in litigation on the merits under the CVRA. And attorney fees have ranged from $400,000 to $3.5 million. We believe that the city of Santa Barbara, after litigating for a time and then ultimately settling, wound up with an approximately $800,000 attorney fee bill. That's an important point under the CVRA because plaintiffs are entitled to their attorney's fees if they prevail, and prevailing really means having the city make the switch, whereas local jurisdictions are not entitled to attorney's fees unless they can prove that the case is purely frivolous, which would be a high burden to meet. So it means that litigation is fairly high risk for the local jurisdiction and fairly low risk for the plaintiffs. And the cost can be obviously substantial because these attorney fee awards do not include just the city's own costs on its own attorneys to litigate the case. So these statistics are reflective of the easier standard for plaintiffs to prevail under the CVRA versus the Federal Voting Rights Act. A lot of jurisdictions just don't see the benefit in trying to fight these claims, whether or not they are valid or not. And with that, I will turn it over to Dave to close it up.
Maybe I'll take a pause here first and say, are there any questions for Dylan? He covered a lot of ground there.
Greg? Wade? No. Thank you,
Right.
Dave.
So very quickly, the purpose of the meeting tonight is, of course, primarily, this is an informational report, non-action item for tonight, so it's to provide information to the public for your council to receive, through public comment, information from the public that it can consider in its deliberations on this matter. And again, no action to be taken tonight, but of course, we're here to answer questions about the process. In terms of next steps, then, as Dylan indicated, by August 17th, your council is going to need to decide whether it adopts a resolution of intent or not. We have a regular meeting scheduled for August 14th, so our intention is to schedule that matter at that time, pending your council's direction otherwise. By November 12th, adoption of an ordinance making the switch to district elections if the resolution of intention is adopted on the 14th. And then, as Dylan just indicated a minute ago, those 4 hearings between August and November. If there's a pre-litigation settlement, of course, there could be an alternative timeline established through that settlement agreement. That concludes our report, Mayor, and we're available to take questions.
Are there any questions? Brad?
Just a general through the chair. You mentioned multiple districts. Carpinteria has always had 5 council members, so you're saying that we may end up having more council members up here because of specific lines drawn or districts added?
Through the mayor, Councilmember Stein, I think that would be unlikely due to the size of the city. I think more council members probably wouldn't make sense. The plaintiffs in this case have indicated that they'd be willing to consider either 4 districts or 5, and if it were a 4 districts established council, rather, it would be that the mayor was elected at large, I believe. So there would still be 5 council members. It just would only be 4 districts that were represented in the city.
Okay, and one more question through the chair, if I might. Okay, all our special districts are at large, but again, the school district, fire district, sanitary district, the water, all the other districts encompass areas of the county, not just the city limits. How would that affect them? And what's to preclude the same group just to start knocking on doors and the same attorney saying, hey, I want 30 grand, I'm going to extort 30 grand out of each one of these now? Is there anything to prevent that?
No, certainly, every local jurisdiction is subject to, the ones you mentioned are subject to the California Voting Rights Act, so the same notice could be served on them at any time.
And are our state legislators looking at this for that very reason, that this is what it's becoming? It's just a way to make a quick buck? Since it's running up and down the state, and a lot of small cities can't afford to be doing this?
That's correct, Councilmember Stein. There is a lot of, currently these are sweeping the state. There are some attorneys that are well known for serving these notices. Over the past several years, the League of Cities has been somewhat involved in this issue in trying to make some changes in the law. I am not up to speed on where they are currently with that. I don't believe there's any major movement afoot at the present time to try to alter this law.
Okay, thank you.
Al? No? Wade? Greg? I do have one question, Dylan. If there was a settlement agreement and district voting was implemented in 2022, would the districts that were drawn over the next, by whatever date we had up there, would those districts apply throughout that entire time, or would they revise those districts as we got closer to the implementation?
Thank you, Mayor, for that question. That's an important clarification. The way it would probably work if we entered into a settlement agreement like I was discussing is that the process of drawing district boundaries would not occur until after the information on the 2020 census was available. So after that information became available, the city would go through the 4-hearing process of considering district boundaries and then adopt the ordinance. So it would all sort of take place right at the end there. The only step the council would be taking in the immediate term, likely, and again I say likely because it would all be driven by the terms of the agreement if the city were to work one out, but in Goleta, using that as an example, the only near-term step they took was adopting the resolution of intent, which just said, here's when we're going to take these actions, and it was pretty general. It was just putting it out until 2022 to start taking those steps to implement. And I believe to adopt the ordinance no later than November 2022, if my memory serves.
Okay. Thank you.
Through the chair, one more question, and that just triggered it. To reiterate, what my understanding is, even if we go into an adopted or into a settlement agreement, there's nothing to preclude someone like Kevin Schmackle or Schnackle from Malibu, the lawyer that's been going up and down the state doing the same thing, to come in and find two more people to come in and file a lawsuit during that point.
Councilmember Stein, that's correct. Anybody could file an additional notice threatening to sue, even if we were to enter into a settlement agreement with the current parties. But we do believe that the law would cap the recovery at $30,000 total for everybody that has threatened to sue. So it's not as if any new party that came in said, "Great, there's another $30,000 on the table. I can try and snag." The only caveat I would put to that statement is this is not an issue that's been litigated, so we can't say for certain 100%. A court has told us that's how you read the law, but the law seems to be pretty clearly written that way.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Not seeing any other questions up here at the dais, I'm going to turn it over for public comment. But before I do, one thing I would like to ask, and that is, because this sometimes happens in issues that are of interest to a lot of our residents, if please try and hold any applause. Applauding probably doesn't move it forwards. That being said, Brian will be keeping track, and if any speaker could kind of hold their remarks to 3 minutes, that would be great. That would move the meeting along. And of course, everybody is welcome to submit a speaker slip. I have a few already, and come up to the dais and speak. And as we mentioned before, if you're going to speak in Spanish, Olivia in the back there will be translating after you speak in Spanish at the microphone. She will be translating that in English. That being said, I'm going to start calling speakers, and the very first speaker I'm going to call is Bob Franco. Welcome, Bob. Good to see you again.
Can you hear me now? City Council. Bob Franco, resident of Carpinteria, and I wish to speak to you tonight in support of district elections for the city of Carpinteria. First, I would like to thank Jetsibe Sandoval and Frank Gonzalez for bringing the subject of district elections to the attention of the city of Carpinteria. This is a wonderful and courageous thing that you have done, and I thank you again for it. District elections in our city is something that should have been done a long time ago. We have gone way too long without equal representation. I hope that the city council makes the wise decision in volunteering to move to district elections and plan to make the change. Although you are not requested to make a determination at this time, this is an opportunity for you to do what is right for the community and to show that we stand together for democracy and equal representation. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. The next speaker we have is Francisco Gonzalez. Francisco, good to see you again.
Mayor, Council, first I want to thank you for this opportunity. I want to start by addressing the actual kind of remark and kind of approach I'm sensing in regards to this. The metrics discussed tonight in regards to Hispanics or Latinos, they're appalling as a community. They're appalling. Insurance-wise, degrees-wise, wage-wise. We Carpinteria, the cost of living here is just over the hill. Last week I was here and I spoke to you guys and I said, I grew up in those poverty lines. I understand that. And I'm on the other side. I'm very fortunate to be. So, and I expressed to you guys the bittersweet understanding being on the other side now. just discussing this with yesterday with somebody who said, I've been working for this local company 18 years and I get $11 an hour. And I share a living room with somebody. So when somebody says I'm trying to extort somebody or insinuates that, I'm not trying to do any of that. I have no business to. I don't need money. That's not what this is about. This is about a community. This is simply about a community I'm glad that our properties are growing. We have technology here. I'm glad that we as a community, financially, business-wise, we're growing and we're healthy. I'm proud of that. I'm proud for you guys for bringing that to us. But as a community, it takes more. It takes more. Latinos make almost half of this community, and they're struggling. Metrics prove it. I mine data for a living. And to see that, I don't understand how we can just say, well, you're trying to extort from me. I'm not trying to extort anything from me. I don't need money. We don't need to prolong this any longer. It's just a matter of reaching a balance and equal representation. And that's all that we want from this. That's it. A balance. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Francisco. The next speaker I have is Lisa Gurevitz. Hello again.
Thank you, and I really appreciate this opportunity to have this discussion in our community. I really hope we don't get into an us and them kind of attitude about this. Anytime that there's better representation, that we see faces like ourselves in positions of policy making, it actually benefits the entire community. And so, historically, people have had to fight very, very hard to get rights, to get equal rights. Women had to fight very hard to get the right to vote and the Civil Rights Act. I mean, it didn't come easily. And this is a way that this is an opportunity for us to make a difference for everybody in our community. So I really appreciate that this is being addressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Next, we have Gabriel Lucatero. Lucatero, is that correct?
Lucatero.
Lucatero.
Gabriel
Welcome,
Lucatero.
welcome, Gabriel.
Can you hear me now? Well, my name is Gabriel Lucatero, and I'm a resident of Carpinteria. And I just want to say that I support district election as a Latino community member, and I want more representation on the city council. Please adopt the district elections. I know that this will benefit me, and it will make me feel more welcome in this community. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabriel. Next speaker up is Jatsibe Sandoval. Good to see you again, Jatsibe.
See you too, Fred Shaw. Hello, City Council members. I'm here to clarify some things. Last City Council meeting, there was the idea that districts separates us. But in reality, districts really do help bring the community together. I want to be able to know the person running. I want to be able to know he lives down the street from me. I really hope we can move together with this as a city. I've seen it happen in Goleta, I've seen it happen in Santa Barbara, and I really want to see it happen here in my hometown of Carpinteria. So please, make the right decision, just help us be more unified in districts. Thank you.
Thank you, Jatsibe. Next speaker up is Jackie Inda. Is Jackie? Oh, there she is. I didn't see her before. Hello, Jackie.
Council members, Mayor, my name is Jacqueline. I am a part of the District Elections Committee in Santa Barbara. I was also one of the plaintiffs in the district elections lawsuit. Let me explain to you something. The point of district elections committees in this county is to diversify councils so that the voices of every part of the community of every single neighborhood is more properly represented. I understand the fear or not really understanding where the logic comes from, asking people to reconsider district elections as a voting right to try to eliminate costs of lawsuits. But The legal system is the voice of the most voiceless in this community and in every community. So it's not whether there's a lawsuit pending. It's not how much it would cost. It's about investing in your community to make a difference. Now let me explain to you a couple of things, and it's probably good for you to know. In the city of Santa Barbara, there was no budging. We went right into a lawsuit. From that lawsuit, the city spent thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, and at the end it was settled out. In the city of Santa Maria, they avoided that lawsuit. They went right into a settlement that drafted up a plan exactly like this, and it had no community involvement. In the city of Goleta, we had a different outcome. The council there, along with the community, decided to develop a commission to extend it out to 2022, to look at the census, and to have that commission have the power to look at the ability of community involvement at a different level that included many different fabrics. That commission actually is able to evaluate things that would help people get more elected, things like terms limits, things like pay for council, other things that would help different community members become more actively involved in civic engagement. It's a civic engagement commission. So really what you have in front of you is an opportunity to step outside the box, to not think about this as a litigated issue with dates and times, but to think about this as a process in which you can engage a community that I'm sure hasn't participated in these council meetings before. And that's the purpose of district elections. And so I hope that you'll take the opportunity to then communicate with your Carpinteria District Elections Committee and start to communicate as to how you want this to move forward in adopting district elections and making the difference that will get more people engaged, that then you will have the opportunity of getting those young people that live and thrive and grow up in the community that you all come from, having the ability to then run and become officers of this particular community. So I appreciate the opportunity and the dialogue. I hope that you will see it differently, because this is the time for you to get engaged before it does become as ugly as it did in Santa Barbara. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jackie. The next speaker we have is Lanny Ebenstein. Welcome, Lanny.
Great, thank you. Mayor, members of the council, it's a pleasure to have the opportunity to address you this evening, and thank you for your service to our community. I'm a lifelong resident of the south coast of Santa Barbara County, and including occasionally Carpinteria. I have been involved with the Boy Scouts in Carpinteria. I formerly was affiliated with Troop 50 here, and I was also have been occasionally involved with school district issues and supported the $90 million Measure U in 2014 for this Carpinteria Unified School District. And I thought that it would be interesting to recount some data that would perhaps help you to recognize why district elections are appropriate at this time in the city of Carpinteria. I went back and looked at the 1980 census and compared that to the 2010 census. And whereas in 1980, the city of Carpinteria was about 30% Latino, in the 2010 census, it's now currently about 44% Latino. So that's almost a 50% increase in the Latino proportion of Carpinteria in the most recent 30 years. And then when you look at the school district, it's even more significant, that trend, as far as in 1985, which is the first year that there's ethnic data available. The Carpinteria Unified School District was about 36% Latino, whereas now it's more than 70%. So again, you have, in this case, almost a doubling of Latino percentage in local schools. So I think that that's one of the reasons why district elections are more appropriate now and heading into the future than perhaps they've been in the past, and that's because of the change of the demography in Carpinteria in recent decades. That's why district elections truly are sweeping the state of California. I think that the best proposal before you is to look at a pre-litigation settlement, because I've always believed, I formerly was a member of the Santa Barbara Unified School District Board of Education, that compromise is something that's important in the political process. And from my standpoint, a system in which there were 4 districts and a mayor elected at large would be something that would be a good outcome, phased in a manner that allowed the community time to become aware of it, and perhaps were implemented after the 2020 census so that those new lines would pertain. I think that, as one of the previous speakers indicated, this is something that should bring everybody in the community together, and I really believe that. In terms of whether or not there were representation issues, I believe that district elections are a better form of election for councils. I realize that there are strengths and weaknesses that are put forward as to both. I think that Carpinteria is a great city, but that district elections will make it an even better city. And thank you so much for this opportunity to address you this evening.
Thank you, Lenny. Before you leave, I have a question from one of the council.
Hi, thank you for your testimony coming out tonight. I just had a small matter of clarification. I believe you said that looking at the demographics of Carpinteria, there was a increase from 30% to 44% Latino.
Yeah.
And then you went on to the school district and you said 70% is the current. Are you talking about the general population or the enrollment in the schools?
That's in the enrollment. I apologize.
All right,
yeah,
thanks.
yeah, the student enrollment in the schools.
Thanks. Yeah.
And it's a unified district, as you know, so that's on a K-12 basis. It varies a little bit as a result of Summerlin, and other areas are also in the Carpinteria Unified School District that aren't in the city of Carpinteria, but it is a benchmark for changing demography in the community.
Right. I think I was interested because I'm remembering back. A lot of our data doesn't look at the other district elections, but there was a Latino candidate that was voted into the school board in 2016. Yeah, 2016. And so so that's in the school district, and I was interested in what the demographics were because of that recent election of that candidate, but I didn't think it was 70%. Anyway, I think that should be regarded as a very encouraging, for people who support this issue that somebody was elected from the school board. But I think they have. My guess is, we don't know, but that the proportion demographically of Latinos is smaller in the county area than it is in the city.
Aren't there trustee areas of some sort in the Carpinteria Unified School District?
There's a district in Summerlin, but everything else is, right.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the last speaker slip I have is Michael Romero.
Mayor Shaw, members of the City Council, thank you for holding this meeting and allowing me the opportunity to speak before you tonight. So I'm here to share my thoughts on the current election system. Given the fact that citizens are encouraged to provide input and offer their own advice through their participation in local government, I feel obligated to offer my own input on this matter, especially when it concerns a public policy that is of great interest to me. On the surface, at-large elections appear to be a logical and simple means of electing city officials. The fact that council members are chosen from a citywide group of candidates is very straightforward and very simple. However, this type of election system still produces an underlying cost that is often absorbed by underrepresented communities throughout the area. In the case of this city and others like it, district elections will bring more diversity of political, economic, and social thought to local government. It will also allow increasingly more individuals to represent their local neighborhoods or communities in years to come and bring a greater sense of cohesiveness to the city. Districts will not divide Carpinteria. They will serve to interconnect the city through the application of district-elected city council members. In other words, district elections are the easiest way to bring local government closer to the very communities and people it serves. It will make it much easier for individuals from all walks of life to run for city council. By ensuring that a city council member is elected to a particular district, it can also make the overall management system more efficient. The council members will be able to simultaneously focus on their own districts while tying in their plans for economic development and growth with one another. While under a district system, council members may be more sensitive to small or minor problems of their constituents, the mitigation of these concerns will nonetheless be highly important. Lastly, district elections will also serve to improve citizen participation in Carpinteria's local government. Increased voting may be a direct byproduct of this new election system, due in part to the local residents of the district council member that is up for election. Communities that are often not fully represented on the council will be given a stronger voice because they will be able to actively select the official that best suits their community. With district elections, Carpinteria will provide a greater and more sensible election system for its constituents. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Now I will ask, is there anybody else out there in the audience who would like to speak? If so, please come to the microphone and you can fill out a slip and give it to Brian when you're finished. Harry?
Harry Manuris, longtime Carpinteria resident. And this is interesting. It's interesting to me to watch the way the machinery of government is changing, and I find it a bit humorous where people are profiteering, attorneys in this case, off the well-being of communities and the feelings and how can we say this, the upsetting within the communities themselves. And it isn't done under the guise of opportunity, it's done under the guise of profit. And I find that unsettling myself. And it's giving, how we can say, opportunity a negative connotation. I feel as myself, and I imagine anyone else in this room, to having something mandated and a policy forced upon you under the realistic restraints that we're witnessing under the legal process. Now, you're hearing a lot of sincere opinions of people in this room. Okay, there's a lot of opinions in our community. It's unfortunate that we as a community are put in a position we're mandated to go ahead and make decisions because of dollars. And it's quite unfair to everyone in the community because do we have a choice? Not really. So I don't have an answer for it, but I do have a question. Now, we talked about, we heard tonight that this is occurring because of a law enacted in Sacramento, a statewide law, as I understand it. Now, what if, okay, now I'm just throwing this out, what if 4 years from now, 2 years from now, that is reversed and we go back to saying that we're not mandated communities to go ahead and be district selective? What does anyone have an answer what would occur at that point? Anyway, just a thought. Thank you.
Thank you, Harry. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this matter? Seeing none, I will bring it back to council for further remarks or questions you have of anybody.
Mayor, if I may, I just throw out a question as well. Okay, if we look at district elections, is that totally based on population and then dividing the boundaries, or how does that even work? And then the other question is, I'd like to hear a little more about this ward system that was gotten rid of.
Councilmember Stein, I can answer the first one. Well, I can sort of answer the first one. We since we haven't gotten to that step yet of figuring out how the district lines are drawn, I can't tell you in detail exactly how it works. The city has retained a demographer who is sort of the go-to guy statewide on dealing with these Voting Rights Act issues. He is working with us, our office, legal counsel, in assessing the claims, and if the city were to make the decision to go to district elections, he would be assisting the city in how to appropriately draw the lines. My very basic understanding at this point is that the district boundary lines would have to be drawn in a way that complies, obviously, with federal law, and that does, again, my understanding at this point, mean that it would have to be, to some extent, based on kind of factors that didn't necessarily just take into race. So my guess would be population, sort of dividing population evenly among districts would probably be the most likely way, but this is something that the demographer would advise us on. And then, I'm sorry, but I'm not able to answer the second question. I don't know.
If you can't, that's fine too. I mean, that's the first I've heard of the ward system. That's why.
Just referencing municipal reform back in the early part of the 19th century. I just had touched on that in my comments. So as a part of that movement, the at-large system was one of the things that came out of that. Later, of course, under the Voting Rights Act, at-large voting, as we've heard tonight, seen as a problem, perhaps an unintended consequence, that minority groups can not have a voice in a winner-take-all kind of majority rules system. So, it's interesting that it came out of a good governance kind of a reform movement and then later evolved to a system where district elections is preferred under the Voting Rights Act and the California Voting Rights Act.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Mayor.
Are there any other questions or comments from anyone on council? Greg?
Good.
Go ahead.
I'd like to just say a few comments. I have an open mind. I believe in equality. I've always strived to do what's best for our community as a whole. I do have some fears of lines being drawn through our city. The potential for balkanization is possible, and I'm scared of that. And I've always looked at Carpinteria as one community, and I'd hate to see it divided. I know that's not the intent, but the unforeseen scares me. And like I say, I always strive and I'll always do my best to for the betterment of our community.
Thank you. Wade?
Sure, thank you. In looking over the statistics here, evidently, I guess Asians don't fit anywhere because I show up as a big zero no matter how you look at it. I bring this up only for one specific reason, is that, again, reflecting back on my family and how they were treated during World War II. Both families, my parents, my grandparents, were both interned for 4 years in an internment camp in the middle of Arizona desert. I bring this up because I've had to deal with and still work with a lot of international people for peace, world peace. First of all, I would like to commend those of you that spoke on behalf of the working with these districts, because this time, as opposed to the first time you came forward, you're very cordial. We felt included. This is what's going to have to happen if we're going to become back to a community, because you're looking at working in 4, possibly 5 different districts. The fear, as Greg said, is that we could divide this community. One thing we can't do is divide it. So as you move forward, we have to all work together cordially. This is inevitable. It's something that's going to change. I definitely feel the need to increase diversity in leadership within our community and within the world. And in doing so, right now we're looking at a specific ethnic group, and that is the Latinos. What we didn't include are the other ones. If you say there's 50% that are Caucasian, 41% Hispanic, where's the other 9%? Where are they going to fit in? We've already made a division there. So we have to look at that and face that fact. Another one, very obvious, we have 50% female in this community also, yet we are 5 males here. So if the districting were to also change that, and right now I don't see it being addressed in that, that's something else we have to take a look at. Because, in fact, we should see every person of interest, whatever they have in the community, what they could bring forward for the betterment of the community is what we have to look at. And that's specific. One other point, when I take a look at how we educate, how we change the demographic, and how we integrate more within a community, it starts with the younger people. What have we done so far to encourage those younger people from all ethnicities to create a leadership role, to have that understanding of what they need to do responsibly to change this community? We don't have that. We don't have that, and that's something we have to start with. So I think along with working with districting, we should also address and take a look at all of the youth activities and see how, in fact, we could develop our younger people to respect each other in a better, more profound way. And as we move forward, I do see that districting is something that has the potential to benefit this community if we work together with that. Thank you.
Al? Thank you, Your Honor. I appreciate Councilman Nomura's comments. I'm very supportive of increasing democracy, and especially when it comes to recognizing groups that have previously been unrepresented. Latinos being one of them. And in terms of I believe that a district election would be more inclusive rather than divisive, except for the unrepresented groups, as mentioned by Wade. But the part that I'm leery about with districts are that those members from the different districts, and maybe I might be one of them, I don't know, that they might tend to favor their own particular district over the city as a whole. Because you are beholden to the voters who vote you in. You're not beholden to the voter who lives on the other side of town. And so I think that's just a natural, inherent potential drawback. I don't know how that's how that's played out, and other cities have done this, but that's one of my reservations about districts. But I think overall, I think it's something that we have to do, or it's something we need to look at. We're not making a decision tonight. Something that we need to look at in terms of diversifying representation in our government.
Thank you. Thank you, Al.
Mayor,
Brian? Yes.
Is it possible to open the public comment again?
I don't believe we're able to do that after we've already come
I think
back
you
to
can.
council. No,
I'm
actually,
a woman. By your directive, we can, if you give it to us. I'm a woman, a former member of the council. This is about diversity, and you're going to shut somebody out?
Hold on.
I think that says a lot about what you're not doing.
Kathleen, if you wait just a second.
Thank you.
Kathleen, if there's no...
Mayor, if I may. Yes. Everybody took the time to be here when the meeting started.
We all have busy lives, Brad. It's not just your own. I think you guys are exemplifying what you need to do. Diversify, please. Thank you. Have a good evening. As a former city council member, I really just think you need to diversify. And now you cut me off? Wow. Where are you people going?
She doesn't come here on time.
Actions speak louder than words. Have a good evening.
Well, forgive us for that happening. Anyway, back to, I would like to say, we are a community, and I think the important thing, and Wade really addressed it very well, is we need to get our young people involved. Those are our future. And that's not just going to, district elections is a good path forwards to accomplish that, I believe. But that being said, it's more than that. We also have to not only get young people involved, but the community as a whole needs to get more involved in the electoral process, because nothing happens if people don't vote and don't elect the candidates of their choice, which means it behooves every one of us living here in Carpinteria to get out there and work for the people that we think can change a dynamic that they want to see changed, either up here on the dais for the council or the school board or any special district, whatever happens to be. If you want somebody there that you think gives better voice to what's important to you, you need to get out there and work and help those people get here. I think it's very important that we have diversity here, up here on the dais. Being one of them, I kind of agree. Five men up on the council. It would be nice to see a woman up here. It would be nice to be other minority groups represented up here. But the way that happens is for everybody not only to believe in district elections, but to get out there and work for those candidates to get them up here. And I would hope that going forward, whatever the end result of this is, that's what we do in the community, so we can move forwards as a community, as a whole. Al?
Yeah, I'm thank you for your comments. I totally agree that we. Here's another point about demographics. I think we're all over 60 years old up here, right? And so. And I would really welcome to have young people involved in our process, but they haven't been doing it. And we haven't had any Latino candidates, but we have for the school board. But I really agree with you. I think that the efforts of the community to educate the youth and organize, and that's I'm glad you guys have a group going for the Latinos. But I think you're going to get a lot accomplished by organizing within the community, and the district election will make it happen sooner, and maybe influence other groups to get involved. But getting people involved in government is important. A lot of times when we don't have contentious issues before us, the room is empty. Nobody cares about government. So. We need to get more people of all ages, of all colors, of all sexes involved. Thank you.
Mayor, one more.
Brett?
One more comment, and I want to thank everybody for coming out and being on time. I mean, good government starts with being courteous, and I appreciate the time that everybody took to come here and voice your opinion. Government's tough. I'm going to I just said that too. It's like a line from a movie, The American President. Governing is tough, and it's right, because everybody is so diverse and has so many opinions, and it all starts with listening to everybody. And I didn't realize I am part of the 60-year-old club this year. It's so weird. But I will say I've been on the city council, this is my 6th or 7th term, almost since 1990. And I've seen very good Latino representation and council members. I've seen very bad. I've seen very good Anglo, very bad. Very good women, very bad. But it all starts with being courteous and working together and listening. And I really appreciate the fact that everyone has come out and they care enough about the community to get involved. And that's what we've seen, and maybe that's probably why we've been up here in the last couple of elections. It's just people are not running, and whether they have busy schedules. I've asked a lot of folks to run Latino, and they just say, we're too busy. And it's not, I'm not, I was raised colorblind. I don't care what your ethnicity, what your gender, it doesn't matter to me. I was raised that way. But people have a lot of stresses on everybody, and that's maybe why local government is always kind of looked at as we just don't have time. But it starts here with local government. as far as the federal, it's such a weird mess going on there. There's so many things to do. But here is where government starts, and we in this room all can affect what happens here, and I appreciate that. So thanks again for coming out and voicing this, and we move forward. And back, I guess, in the 14th?
Well, hold on.
Sorry.
The next, if there's no other comments from the dais, I would like to again say to everybody, reiterate what Brad said. We really appreciate everybody showing up tonight. This is a very important issue in the community, and we will move forward with this, and I can guarantee you that the five of us will work very hard to come to the proper solution for this for the community, because like you, we all love living here and love the community. That being said, before we close, I'm going to set, if it's okay with the other four council members, set a closed session for August 7th here at 5:30. That's next Monday. Next Monday. Al, can you be here next Monday? Greg?
Yes, I will.
And Brad? And Wade?
I believe so. Hold on.
Okay. Real quick, we'll
That
find
is
out.
a yes.
That is a yes. Then all five of us will be here for that particular thing. Again, thank you, everybody, for coming out. This is important, and we really appreciate your taking time out of your busy schedules to be here. And again, thanks to Sylvia and Olivia for their help with the translation. That being said, I will...
Mayor, sorry
Yes,
to
oh,
interrupt.
sorry, Dave. Dylan?
Yeah, before we close, I just wanted to clarify, the closed session on Monday, on August 7th, will be under the litigation exception for purpose of discussing this case, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and there
Yes.
will be, just for the public's knowledge, there will be an opportunity again for public comment prior to the council's adjournment to closed session.
Okay, thank you very... Dave?
Yeah, and just again to clarify, there won't be any open session item on that day and no decision-making on the 7th.
Right. Okay, thank you very much for that. In that case, it is at 21 minutes to 7, we are adjourned. Good night, everybody. Have a good evening.